Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's movie is 1950's Borderline, directed by William A. Cedar. A surprising thing about this movie is that it's about drug smuggling. Drugs were a problem back in the 50s as they are today, and there's no end in sight. The government can claim it's winning the war against drugs as much as they want, but the fact is that it's a war that'll never be won. There's just too much money to be made, too many people with a vested interest in it. And every time someone gets arrested, there are 1,000 people behind them ready to step in and take over. I've heard some people claim that legalizing drugs would solve the problem, and while that would put an end to smuggling, it would create a million new problems. Even if a prescription was required, well, plenty of people manage to get their hands on prescription drugs illegally anyway. I don't think there's an answer to this conundrum. I honestly feel it's a problem that'll never be solved. Although it might be hard to believe today, for a long time Hollywood movies were not allowed to deal with drug use and addiction. According to the Hays Code, the do and don't you dare list adopted by Hollywood after the Fatty Arbuckle scandal in the 1920s, drugs were high on the don't side of the list. Exactly how these idiotic rules protected the country from corruption is beyond me. And we're going through the same thing right now with people who I'm sure mean well when they attempt to enforce movie and television ratings. And to tell you the truth, now that I'm getting, well, let's just say a little bit older, I can see the point they're pressing. While I mostly enjoy the shows that are pushing the boundaries of television, there are times when I feel they're pushing a little bit too hard. For example, I recently started watching the show Nip Tuck on the FX network. And while I feel it's an excellent show, I also feel that sometimes it goes a bit farther than it needs to. Pushing limitations is something Americans do. It's just part of our spirit. But for me, at least, the thrill of seeing something on television that was previously taboo is gone. I've gotten used to it. You know, it's amazing how quickly humans can adjust to changes. If you told me back in, say, 1970, that I'd be paying 8 times the price for a gallon of gas and 10 times the price for a pack of cigarettes and be accustomed to doing it, I would have said you were crazy. Anyway, Borderline is, at first look, a movie about drug smuggling. It opens with a couple who have been captured at the border with a load of heroin and being questioned, but it's soon revealed that they're just mules transporting the drugs into the U.S. for Mr. Big. When the cops try to figure out how they're going to get the goods on the head guy, we get a female cop volunteering to go undercover. The female cop is, of course, Spunky, which is a variation on the spunky female mechanic character. You all know what I'm talking about here. The usual way they're introduced in a movie is the hero walks up to a car in the garage and you see a pair of legs sticking out from under it, wearing work boots. He then addresses the mechanic and, surprise, the mechanic slides out from under the car on a creeper, and it's a woman! Usually a pretty but tomboyish female whose face is artfully smeared with grease. Anyway, it's brought out that the mid-level bad guy they're going after likes sleazy women, which gives the female cop a chance to wear revealing clothes and act slutty. She gets a job as a showgirl down in the Mexican town the scumbag works out of and immediately lands a position in what is arguably the worst chorus line I've ever seen in a movie. A rotten song called Borderline, I believe, is shoehorned into the movie so we can get a chance to see Claire Trevor strut what little stuff she has as the girls in the line bleed out some lyric it's impossible to understand. This is the point where I began to get confused as to what this movie was trying to be. When Trevor begins trying to get the attention of the mid-level bad guy, played by Raymond Burr, she does it in such an amateurish, obvious manner that I began to wonder if this was supposed to be a comedy. It soon switched back to a hard-bitten noir-like atmosphere and then jumped back into the realm of humor again. It does this several times in the course of the film, and it's very confusing. Adding to this confusion is the casting of Fred MacMurray as a smuggler, because since I think of him in terms of My Three Sons and the several Walt Disney movies he made, seeing him as a tough guy was a bit of a stretch. He makes a good job of it, don't get me wrong, but I kept waiting for him to whip out a pipe and stutter, "Chip, go help Uncle Charlie with the dishes." I'm not going to tell you any more about the movie since I don't want to spoil it, so let's get on to the people who made it. William A. Sater was born on June 10th, 1890 in New York City. I don't usually talk about the directors of the movies we show, but Sater directed so many classic comedies that I felt I had to say something about him. He started in films doubling cowboys and quickly worked his way up to directing, making his first movie, The Honeymoon Role, in 1915. He directed an incredible 122 movies during his long career, specializing in comedy. Some of them include Diplomaniacs with Wheeler and Woolsey, Sons of the Desert with Laurel and Hardy, Room Service with the Marx Brothers, and a segment in a movie I only saw once a long time ago and never forgot, If I Had a Million with W.C. Fields. If I Had a Million was an anthology film concerning a millionaire who was dying, and rather than leave his fortune to his money-grubbing relatives, opens a phone book and randomly selects people out of it, giving them each a check for $1 million. This was in 1932, so $1 million was worth a lot more than it is now. The stories are in turn funny, dramatic, ironic, touching, and sad. Like I said, I've only seen this movie once, and it's not available on video in any form. I'd love to get it for this show, but it's currently tied up in a mess of copyright entanglements, and whether or not I'll get a chance to see it again is an open question. Fred MacMurray was born on August 30th, 1908 in Kankakee, Illinois. His father was a concert violinist, and young Fred became a musician early in life, eventually singing and playing in orchestras to earn tuition for college. He moved to Hollywood for a while and eventually went to New York, where he appeared on Broadway, and moved on to touring the country in vaudeville, eventually returning to Hollywood and landing a contract with Paramount in 1935. He appeared in 88 movies and 27 television shows, including the classic Double Indemnity with Barbara Stanwyck, although he is best remembered by baby boomers as Steve Douglas, the widower father of my three sons. Interestingly, he demanded that all of his scenes for that show be filmed at the beginning of the season, knocking them off in a week or so then he was free for the rest of the season. He created some interesting continuity problems on the show, but they're not really noticeable until little Dawn Lynn joined the show and her front teeth kept disappearing during her scenes with MacMurray and reappearing in other scenes. He was the first actor considered for the role of Elliot Ness in the TV show The Untouchables, and was also the first choice to play Perry Mason in the show of the same name. He died of pneumonia on November 5th, 1991 in Santa Monica, California. Claire Trevor was born Claire Wemlinger on March 8, 1910 in Brooklyn, New York. She specialized in playing hard-boiled blondes, earning the title the Queen of Film Noir because of her many appearances in that type of film. She began her acting career in the 20s, eventually appearing on Broadway in the 30s. She appeared in 69 movies, beginning with 1933's Life in the Raw, and went on to appear in classics such as 1937's Dead End, 1939's Stagecoach with John Wayne, 1944's Murder, My Sweet, and one of my favorite movies, 1948's Key Largo, with Edward G. Robinson and Humphrey Bogart, for which she was awarded a Best Supporting Actress Oscar. Claire Trevor died of respiratory ailments April 8, 2000, in Newport Beach, California. This is a very, very strange film. As I mentioned before, it really doesn't seem to ever settle into one particular area as far as theme goes. The subject of drug smuggling doesn't exactly lend itself to humor. You can imagine how confused I got when what I thought was going to be a noirish drama suddenly showed elements of screwball comedy. When the questionable humorous aspects of this movie began to rear him in shape and skull and it suddenly leapt back to drama again, I didn't know what the hell to think. I've seen enough movies to know when my leg is being pulled, but this one just about yanked it out of the socket. One of the interesting things about having this job is seeing movies that I'm completely unfamiliar with, and while it does sometimes pay off with films of surprising quality, most of the time it's like bending down to pet what looks like a friendly dog and getting your arm bitten off up to the elbow. This movie, though, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't fit any genre I'm familiar with, and while the story is coherent, the execution is very confusing. In short, I don't know what to think of this movie. If you can figure out what they were trying to do, write me and let me know, because I haven't got a clue. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy Borderline, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.